What's up, everybody? I am back with my full thoughts on Captain Marvel. Um, Now, here's the thing. I kind of had second thoughts about even doing this just because, well, look, needless to say, there's going to be spoilers here, but I'm going to guess a lot of you probably don't care since based on, like, the three dislikes I got, like, in a row almost instantly, I think a lot of you have made up your minds about this movie, so I don't think anything that I say or anything I spoil or reveal is gonna really bother anyone in any way. But in the event that it might, in the event that you're actually still sane and not treating this movie like a culture war, because it's really not, um, I hope you enjoyed the video. For those of you who have already made up your minds, please just leave your like, your dislike, your whatever, and click off the video, and then we don't have to have an argument in the comments. That'd be great. Now, gosh, I feel so cynical saying that, but now, moving forward. Okay, so Captain Marvel, like I said, it's a good movie. I liked it. It's actually a really good movie. And I know that I've had a lot of people give me flack for saying that I thought it was really good, but I won't even put it in my top 10. And I'm like, guys, there are 21 MCU movies right now. And honestly, even being in the top 15 is some pretty good company because they're all good movies. Like there are very few MCU movies that I would ever rank as like genuinely bad. And like just because I rank one movie above another doesn't necessarily mean that I think that that's a bad movie or it. So I think a lot of people are taking. I'm just tired of it, man. I'm tired of people taking this so personally. It's my opinion on a dang movie. But with that being said, let's continue here. Um, Now, one thing that I really liked about Captain Marvel was the character arc that they give Carol. And yes, contrary to what I've heard a lot of people say, there is a character arc. Certainly more so than a lot of people are willing to give her credit for, and honestly, better than a lot of some of the more cliche, quote unquote, better comparisons I've seen. Um, just because something is a bit more in line with your expectation does not inherently make it better. All right. Now, I do want to say that, yes, Carol is a bit cocky. But I also want to say that that's kind of normal considering what she is. And when I say that, I mean she is a fighter pilot, first and foremost. They have naturally a bit more of a cocky streak. Even in the Air Force, the pilots are like the jocks of the group, you know? So that's a thing. It's going to be a thing. But I can't help but notice, like, whenever that same trait is coming from, like, a guy in the MCU, whether it's Star-Lord or Tony Stark or what have you, I never really see that played as a negative for them. It's never something that prevents them from being likable. But for some reason, it is here, and that does bug me. But I say that there's a reason, too, that she comes out kind of flat and cocky at first and a bit just uh, better later. In that she has an arc where throughout the entire beginning of the movie, they are basically telling her, you know, you need to suppress your emotions. You need to not show them. They make you weak. They make you less of a warrior. They make you vulnerable. And to see her kind of buy into that at first because she genuinely thinks that Yon-rogg and the Supreme Intelligence and everything is trying to help her. She thinks they're her friends. You know, we want you to be the best version of yourself, yada yada, etc. However, well, like I said, suppressed emotions, everything else. But as she kind of gets to know, when she gets to Earth, and she kind of crash lands there, and as she gets to know the people there and starts to find out more about, who she is and who she was and what her life was and her old friends, and she kind of gets the emotion and the personality and everything that she had been always taught to suppress. That starts coming out more toward the surface. And I said before that I think a lot of people miss that, but The more I keep reading people's commentary on it, the more I'm positive that they really missed that. It's not like a big pronounced thing, and they don't make a huge deal about pointing it out. So I think that might kind of be the problem. It really feels like a lot of people look for specific flags anymore. Like people don't notice how a character develops; they look for development flags. Like major turning points, major events. That's how you know they developed. It can't be anything subtle. So, and I'm not even gonna say it's huge art, but it's there. So yeah, I actually really found I appreciated that. Uh, but one thing that I do really want to talk about too is a little bit more about the politics, like the politics that frankly aren't in the movie. I kept getting assured by so many people that there were going to be, a lot of gender politics inserted into this, and radical feminism and all men are trash and all women are amazing, and that's just not in there. There are some guys who are douchebags in there, yeah, but that's life, There are. I'm getting really tired of people who act like if people try to address the fact that genuine sexism and genuine racism do still exist in the world, even in the good old U.S. of A. here, that they're somehow saying that all men are garbage or all white people are racist or all, especially when you see something specifically to the contrary. Like, look at Colson. Everyone keeps saying that, oh, this is anti-male or specifically anti-white male, and it's like, first of all, way to basically disqualify Nick Fury as being a positive male, depiction just because of the color of his skin. But even if you want to do that, Colson is a white dude, and he's a frankly a straight white male and a good guy. He's not in the movie as much, but he's certainly not a negative depiction of that. Um, the villain is an alien. Like, I guess if you want to try to argue he's a white male. Oh yeah, spoiler alert. The actual villain is Yon-rogg, which a lot of people figured. Um, but it's there's no gender politics really in there beyond, no, it's like traditional feminism, not even the radical stuff. So I don't get this weird insistence that there was politics in the movie, and everyone kept insisting politics is going to be in the movie just because the actress made some political comments, and that's frankly as stupid as saying that because Chris Evans supports gun control, that Captain America is going to have a really strong gun control message in the next movie, or that because Chris Evans was a support, an Obama supporter, that the Winter Soldier was going to have a non-critical view of government. It's no, you know, or of the current administration's policy. It's like, aside from the fact that they don't really do the whole real president thing, I don't think, um, or at least they stopped doing that. Yeah, that's not going to be a thing. Look, I am tired of this. Okay, and then you got people trying to play cute, saying that, oh, politics, it's still in there because look, the scrolls, spoiler alert, the scrolls are refugees, and the Kree are being demonized for just wanting to protect, their own borders, and it's like that's not what's happening there, and that's not why they're being demonized. So people just really, really need to stop that. Uh, the scroll, what people seem to forget, did not actually protect their own border. They radically expanded their border. They claimed other territory. They assimilated other cultures, for better or worse. Like, just pulled them right in and absorbed them, and subjugated them. And that's that. They're not, and protecting their borders, they're not protecting their borders. It's revealed pretty early on that the accusers, especially, are of the opinion that so long as any scroll exists, any scroll, they will, um, more or less, um, you know, wipe them out. Just nuke things from orbit. They're committing genocide. They are not protecting their borders. So this idea that this is somehow supposed to be some sort of political statement about the United States is incredibly dumb. In fact, to be perfectly blunt, it has a lot more in common with friggin' Nazi Germany and the way they expanded their borders, and anywhere they found any of the Jews or the gypsies or the gays, they'd wipe them out. But, that's neither here nor there. The point is, it didn't have the kind of politics people insisted, and now the pivot they're trying to make to say, oh, see, it had politics, it's weak. It's really weak, because everyone knew what you meant. Nobody's fooled by this. But, yeah, they're going and shifting to that, though. The Skrulls as the refugees. Now, that was honestly not something I expected, and I was fully expecting them to either, that to turn out to be a lie, and it was like a double cross, your usual cliche thing. But that was an interesting and kind of unique twist. And I see a lot of people get upset about that because they're like, oh, the Skrulls being good guys, we just lost out on Secret Invasion. We just lost. First of all, just because Secret Invasion is a well-known Skrull arc, I'm going to say it now, does not mean it's a good Skrull arc, because it's really not. It's not that great. It got way too expanded and convoluted, and we were just supposed to take it for granted that characters who we had known for years had been Skrulls for the longest time. And it was just kind of a crock, because it's like, so everything that I loved about the storyline and everything I thought was so heroic, and it's like, why would the Skrulls do that just for the sake of maintaining cover to play some ridiculously long game, But no, that's what it was. And then you had Skrulls who just completely forgot they were Skrulls and actually thought they were the people. It got dumb. There was a lot of dumb stuff in Secret Empire. There was some cool stuff, or Secret Invasion. There was some cool stuff, but there was a lot of dumb too. But that being said, I don't think that is precluded from happening, nor are the Super Skrulls precluded from happening. It's entirely possible. I mean, the Skrulls are very divided right now. They are, for all intents and purposes, refugees. Even if they do all find a home and a planet that they can start to rebuild on, what are they going to do for a system of government? Who's going to lead them? What happens to the factions who decide they want to go out there and get revenge? What if they decide they're going to build their own empire to go after the Kree one day? What if they do start, doing the whole "we've learned how to copy abilities too" thing? And next thing you know, you got the Super Skrulls, and the Super Skrulls decide to go rogue, or they decide that we have this power now. What we say goes. It's still very possible. Nothing has cut that off. This is just an interesting twist on this for this one movie. And I don't know. It's interesting. I'm a little iffy on it, but it's at least interesting. I haven't seen it really explored in the comics at all. It's some uncharted territory, so we'll see what they do with that. There's a lot of possibility there too. Now, one thing that I also think is cool is the Kree Empire, and specifically the how they're ruled. Like, they don't have a ruler. They are governed essentially by an AI, a supposedly impartial AI that has their code, their laws, their way of life, built right into its framework. Excuse me. Sorry, alarm. Built into its framework. And what I find interesting about that is the way it enforces that. Like when the Kree, basically in power or in general, think that you've stepped on a line, or you're not really abiding by the Kree way, or you're asking too many questions. They encourage you to commune with the Supreme Intelligence, and and to ask the questions that you seek, and to get the answers you seek. And when you do, this thing appears to you. All right, not as any kind of specific being. It changes its appearance, its form, based on what it finds in your mind. The person that means the most to you, that you have the most respect for, the most love for, etc. Deep in your subconscious, and uses that to essentially emotionally manipulate you into thinking, oh, they want what's best for me. Oh, why would my mentor, why would my friend, my brother, my parent, my lover, my whatever, why would they lie to me, right? You know, it's an emotionally manipulative system, and if that still doesn't work, then it will essentially rearrange you and fix you by force. Implanted memories, changed memories, forced amnesia, etc. It's actually an extremely, I would argue, sorry, that it is actually extremely not only Orwellian, because it is, but cyberpunk dystopian in a sense. Um, but without any of the usual cliches that come with that, like cyberpunk dystopias, ironically, are almost always, oh, it's a corporation, it's this, it's that, it's whatever, and, we're all wearing, like, cybernetics, and everything's kind of a mess outside, but we're supposed to believe that it's almost too in your face, you know, like, it's loud, it's boisterous, but that's where the punk comes from. But what I mean by this is, like, it avoids those cliches, because the Kree, so far as they're concerned, this is a perfect world, and it does look nice and pretty out there to a degree. And they do have this big old thriving empire, and the Kree are these wicked evil beings, and yada yada, etc. And but at the same time, it's like the moment you start to question that, the moment the facade starts to fade, you are brought before the Supreme Intelligence, and you are brought back into line. And then you were sent out, and you don't even realize it. You don't know you're being controlled. You don't know that you're being punished for your wrong thing, because they even erase the memory of the punishment. They just get you back on track and erase all the unpleasantness, and you go about your life. You are like in its thrall. You are basically enslaved to it, and you don't even realize it. And that to me is actually a really scary and really fascinating concept that I'm going to see more movies kind of toy with that. Not just in the MCU. I would love to see something like that explored in like a dedicated movie about that kind of society, you know? But I thought that was really interesting. Now, the one thing that I do think that some people are going to have some ire with, and I'm still myself a bit iffy on this, but I can kind of see why they did it. And they did do it well, so I'm not like super objecting to it. I mean, with it, yeah, well, as in how the movie verse is set up versus how the comic universe was set up, and what's different about that, right? What There are certain things that they can't just do exactly like the comics because of how the movies were set up. Like Spider-Man, when he was going to be introduced, the only way you could explain at that point why he had been literally nowhere during all this is, well, he was a kid and he just got his powers, and it's like, okay, well, there you go, right? So of course that's going to be a bit different. And I mean, it's really not a whole lot more egregious than some of the other stuff they changed in the MCU. A lot of it I wasn't a fan of, though. Some of it I wound up kind of okay with. This one I'm kind of leaning more towards okay right now, but, it's a bit of a point of contention, and that is Marvel is actually in this movie. Marvel, however, is a woman. I'm going to let that sink in for a second. Marvel is actually Wendy Lawson. That's the alias she went by on Earth. She came to Earth to work on Project Pegasus and used the Tesseract to try to build a light speed capable ship because she wanted to essentially help protect the Skrulls from the Kree. She learned the truth of what the Kree and the Accusers were doing to the Skrulls. She was tired of this endless, ceaseless war between the two, and she wanted to take the remaining Skrulls that were scattered throughout the galaxy and find them a new home and set them up there. And And it's interesting because there are some parallels to Marvel from the comics. I mean, obviously she wasn't a superhero, but obviously due to how the MCU was set up and the Avengers being like the first real appearance of superheroes since Captain America and Captain Marvel actually being like pretty much strictly off the books because they were trying to keep the whole alien presence thing hidden from people at the time until the Chitauri invasion really busted that wide open. But it's it's definitely not the comic version, but I think it's kind of in the spirit of the comic character and the sort of thing he stood for, in terms of being tired of the ceaseless war and trying to hoping one day for a peace to be possible. Um, and I do like the fact that Marvel still wound up Carol's kind of mentor, someone that she really looked up to, and also is sort of still how she got her abilities to the point that she did, and also the way they tied Yon-rogg into that, in that he was the one who shot them down, and the device exploding, essentially kind of because of him, and his actions, and that's what gave her her powers in the first place. That's actually something that's almost right out of the comics. So I thought that was interesting. I think one reason, though, that Marvel might be a woman is at one point, according to Anna Boden and Ryan Fleck, they were actually considering Helen Cobb to be in the movie. And Helen Cobb is actually one of Carol's role models in the comics. She was a fighter pilot, and although Lawson wasn't like a fighter pilot, she was a pilot and she was a scientist who Carol kind of really looked up to and encouraged her passion for flight and everything, um, and I think they might have kind of fused her with Marvel, and that's how they came to this, which is kind of understandable to a point. I mean, it works for the movie. It kind of works for the movie verse, and I do think too that one thing that's like really interesting is just the way that her powers came to be and what fueled it. And the reason I think that's interesting is because she did get her powers essentially from that engine, and that engine was being powered by the Tesseract. And on the one hand, the Tesseract fueling her power and her power coming from that could actually turn out to possibly be one of the keys to defeating Thanos. But at the same time, because Thanos actually has the stone that powered the Tesseract, which also gives her her powers, I can't help but wonder, is that going to be something that she can really control? Like, is that actually going to give him an edge over her powers? Like, will that make what should make her able to, like, beat the crap out of Thanos suddenly not able to? Because that would actually be interesting. Like, especially as, like, a dramatic point. Like, oh, she's getting the upper hand. It looks like she's about to beat Thanos, and the stone, he somehow utilizes that, and it blocks her power. I don't know how that's going to go down. There are a lot of things that opens up. It could also be, I like they found out that the Mind Stone, using the Mind Gem, the only way they could destroy that and essentially make it unusable was to use the power of the Mind Gem against the Mind Gem and shatter it. And maybe that's what's actually going to enable her to maybe destroy that stone? I don't know. Um, it's entirely possible. We'll see how that goes. But there are a lot of doors that have been opened with this movie, and with Doctor Strange, and with a lot of stuff. And I think it's interesting to see where the universe can go from here, and I think it's, the whole Tesseract thing too was like a nice way to tie it back to the other MCU movies, and you know, kind of tie her into the plot without really forcing it, because now she does have like a vested interest. And it also is interesting because I find it funny that people are like, if she was really You know, if she really gave Nick Fury that pager for emergencies and she would come back if he needed it, why did he even bother creating the Avengers? Why did he even bother, why did he never press it before with Ultron and with the Chitauri and with, well, for one thing, Carol's been like out in space trying to gather up the scrolls and get them to a home for like 20 years. So, she's been out there doing all that. Uh, Light years away, I kind of doubt that she's going to be, able to instantly respond. I mean, even when you look at the post credit scene, when Fury pressed it that time, a lot of time has gone by. I forget how much time they said happened between Infinity War and Endgame. It's clearly been some time. You got people in therapy still. The numbers are finally, the dead have finally all been, well, dead or missing, have finally been tallied. Um, and it's 50% of the estimated world population, all that. So time has passed since Fury first pressed that, and they've had to keep sending out that signal multiple times before she finally arrives. So, yeah, why didn't Fury press that with Ultron and with the Chitauri, and why did he form the Avengers? Because he knew that that was a very high probability. He would not be able to, get her there in time if an imminent emergency popped up, and that's why he formed the Avengers. That's why he started looking for other heroes. Because he wasn't stupid, too. He knew that she couldn't be the only one in the world that was, capable of that. And by creating the Avengers, he actually created a defense force that kind of made it unnecessary to have to try to rely solely on one person. Um, I do know, though, that a lot of people are upset that she's the reason they're called the Avengers, because Avenger was her call sign in the Air Force. And they're like, but Captain America was the first Avenger. Captain America was never really officially titled the first Avenger. It was kind of an honorary title given just because he was, first and foremost, the first of the Avengers to exist. And also really one of the first superheroes in the Marvel Universe. Like, Captain America was around in the 1940s. That's the furthest back this franchise has really ever gone in terms of like a whole setting. So that's why, the movie's called The First Avenger. But it never said that it was named for Captain America. Like, not once is that really a thing. So, it's interesting to kind of figure out where he got the idea for the Avenger Initiative, and that would be why. She was like a defensive mechanism of sorts, a shield for their world, and it makes sense to me for her to or for that to be why he'd want to create the Avengers. Multiple heroes, multiple defenses. Not relying on just one. Um, Now, when it comes to Fury, one thing that I also see that a lot of people complain about that I actually didn't really have an issue with was the way he lost his eye. And I really think people need to get over that because, first and foremost, it was funny and subversive. And I know people are really allergic to that word, but you know what? Infinity War was subversive too. That subverted a lot of expectations. Like a lot of people were kind of expecting Thanos to win, like on some superficial level. But deep down, all of us kind of hoped that they would, that the heroes would still win, and it looked like they might when Thor threw his axe right into Thanos' chest, and he was sitting there pushing it in, and it's like, okay, so they stopped him. They just stopped him. But then he's mumbling something, and Thor leans in, and he leans forward and whispers, "You should have gone for the head," and snap. And then we just sat there watching in disbelief, even after the snap, because it's like nothing's happening yet. And we just sit there in disbelief as everyone then starts slowly, like one by one, fading away, turning to dust, just disintegrating into nothingness. That there was a subversive move. Subversion is not something that is inherently a dirty word, just like refugee is not something that is inherently a dirty word, but I digress. Um, it can be done well, and honestly, I think that was a case of it. Just because Nick Fury is a genuinely badass character, so for him to find out that the reason that he lost his eye was simply because a Flurkin, scratched him in the eye. Uh, and like the claws that they have, they're not normal cats, right? So even if that had gotten infected, it could have presumably been treated. But since it was an alien creature and it probably had something in its claws that wasn't treatable here on Earth, he wound up losing the eye. That's also why, he said the last time I trusted someone, I lost an eye, because he was talking about how much he trusted that cat. But I loved Nick Fury. I loved Goose. I loved the fact that Nick, even though he's still kind of new to all this stuff, hasn't really seen it before, he's still kind of taking it in stride, keeping his cool, making plans around it. Very sharp. All the badass things Nick Fury has done and all the things that make Nick Fury badass are still intact. Just because the way he lost his eye was like anticlimactic, arguably. That's the whole point. Like, that's a subversion. One of his most badass features, ironically, that makes him look badass was actually something that was a complete accident. And his trust issues come from, like, not just, everyone assumed it was going to come from the Skrulls, but that's why it's hilarious that, it kind of came from the cat, too. Like, but at the same time, to me, it was amusing. It's funny. It doesn't make him any less of a badass character, so I really don't know why people have an issue with that. Goose himself, though, the Flerken, the cat, really does steal the show. He's an awesome kitty. Like, very well trained cat, and the when they kind of showed what it really looked like, the whole Cthulhu looking mouth there, just tentacles whipping around, grabbing people, eating them, grabbing the Tesseract, holding it. And then the end credit scene where he's like hacking up a hairball, but he winds up coughing up the Tesseract right onto Fury's desk. That was amazing. And yet, I mean, there was a lot of genuinely like funny and likable stuff in the movie, and the characters and the way they acted. Seeing a young, really idealistic Coulson. I mean, Coulson never really stopped being idealistic, but just seeing him when he was that young and he was the new guy, and yet, he immediately managed to earn Fury's trust just because even when he had them dead to rights on that stairway, he disobeyed orders and went with his gut and did what he knew, was the right thing. Because he knew Fury. He knew that Fury wasn't, going to be someone who just betrayed them or anything like that. So, yeah. He did do the right thing there. And I liked that. And I like that's what started him working for Fury directly, and what kind of earned him the trust. And I like it. I really do. But that being said, it's whatever. Coulson's not like a central character to the film, so I can't really say a whole lot about him. But what I did see, I really liked. And it was nice seeing Clark Gregg in the movies again and seeing Coulson in the movies again. And it's kind of sad that it's probably the last time we're going to see him for a while. But, it was nice. At any rate, that's most of my thoughts on Captain Marvel. Again, it's a really good movie, I think. Really enjoyed it. I really liked certain aspects of it. Like, loved certain ideas in there. And I really hope they expand on those. And I really hope that honestly, I know a lot of people are going to say, well, that's ripping something out. It's like, no, first of all, I'm pretty sure that it's not an inherently original idea in the first place. It's just like the first time I've encountered it. But I really do hope other movies kind of toy with that concept and run with the whole oppressive AI that just you don't even realize you're being oppressed by it. That to me was genuinely great. At any rate, that is it for now, you guys. Those are my thoughts on the movie. We're welcome to discuss down below, so long as we do stay civil. That's my only request. And I will catch all you guys later. Peace.